So we've reached the phase in the war where Iranian FPV drones are striking American equipment at bases in Iraq. We also had a 30-day ceasefire proposed by the United States yesterday that Iran overnight seems to have rejected. Now, starting out with this clip that was released by Iranian-backed Iraqi Shia militias, shows a number of FPV drone strikes in Camp Liberty, Iraq. And what you're going to see in this video is an AN/MPQ-64 Sentinel radar get hit, as well as a UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter, medevac helicopter, actually. Now, Camp Liberty is a base that used to have a massive U.S. presence. It's been significantly dialed down, but we do still have a presence there. And from my understanding, the Iraqis don't fly Black Hawk helicopters. They fly Bell 412s and Mi-8s. That actually looks like a medevac helicopter. With it looks like the militia tried to blur out the fact that there was a red cross on the side. But either way, what this is pointing to is that our forces are vulnerable everywhere. It still does not look like we have taken the FPV threat seriously. Unfortunately, we've had 4 years to figure this out, but we still have helicopters, expensive helicopters, sitting out in the open, radar sitting out unprotected. Personally, I'm not convinced that, based off the footage that we've seen, that we have taken the adequate defensive measures to protect our troops and our equipment from this threat. And one of the concerns here is that if Iran surges this capability quickly, and we know they have it, right? There was a picture that came out earlier today, supposedly of an Iranian soldier on Karg Island showing an FPV drone. We know Iran has FPVs, all right? Not a surprise at all. The question is going to be, how many fiber optic FPVs do they have, out to what range? That's the real question. How many, of what type, not do they have them at all? And we've got this weird mindset that I've been able to pick up, that I've noticed recently, where so long as we do not deploy troops into Iran, they aren't actually going to be at risk of being hit by these drones. That couldn't be further from the truth. Look at Operation Spiderweb, where Ukrainian drone operators and the SBU took out a number of Russian strategic aircraft deep inside of Russia at their military airfields. This video that we're playing here is in Baghdad. Right, that's a base where the U.S. has had a footprint for a long time now. Every U.S. military installation around the world is at risk of these FPVs, and video after video that we're seeing this shows that nets are not going up, fencing is not going up in some of these areas. It's hard to see that we're adequately prepared. And this is going to be a problem, because if Iran decides to surge this threat in the near term to a number of our bases throughout the region, diplomatic facilities, our embassies, they could do a lot of damage before we actually catch on and start implementing viable defensive measures. Now, this comes as just yesterday, President Trump announced that we had actually won the war, which was followed shortly thereafter with a discussion about a 30-day ceasefire that it looks like Iran rejected. But here's President Trump yesterday saying that we did it. That's it. We won.
We've won this. This war has been won. The only one that likes to keep it going is the fake news. I mean, the New York Times, you read the New York Times, it's like we're not winning a war where they have no Navy and they have no Air Force and they have no nothing. And we literally have planes flying over Tehran and other parts of their country.
Now, the president says a lot of stuff like this, but we're kind of balancing this with, I'm hearing folks say, we need to be patient. War takes a long time, and they're correct. But we've also got the head of state here regularly. I mean, this is like the third or fourth time that he has said we've already achieved all of our objectives. We've already won. It's basically over. So that is what is kind of expediting, is kind of pushing along expectations. Having the American people say, well, the president says it's over. Shouldn't we expect some sort of immediate result? And it's not there yet. I mean, the Strait of Hormuz is still closed. In fact, yesterday, there's rumors started coming out that there was a ceasefire proposed from the United States to Iran for 30 days. And we got to take this with a big grain of salt, because first off, President Trump was speaking at the time that this supposedly came out. He didn't say anything of it, which is not very much like him. You think that he would want to announce some big progress like this. But shortly after he wrapped up his remarks, we got this leak of a 15-point peace plan sent to Iran to end the war. Now, in the plan, by and large, it's what we saw at the beginning of the conflict, what the United States has argued for a long time. You know, no ability to enrich uranium. So we've taken that a bit further. Enriched uranium would be removed, talking about standing down their missile program, a lot of different things like that. But a few stood out to me here. One of them was that Iran will abandon their proxy network. Another was that the missile program would be dealt with at a later time. And then another was that all sanctions would be lifted. Those are unique, right? So the proxy program would essentially be the complete defanging of the Iranian regime and the IRGC as we know it today. That, I agree, would be a good thing. It's hard to see that the IRGC is in a spot right now where they would voluntarily give up that capability. The idea of kicking the missile program down the road doesn't seem good. That's very clearly been a threat to the United States and our Gulf allies. And all sanctions being lifted is not something that seems to have been on the table during the talks leading up to this war. So that's a new aspect that Iran has pushed for a long time and seems like it's probably going to have to be something in a negotiated settlement. There's probably going to need to be a little bit of some sort of incentive and to help the Iranian nation stand back up after this war is over. That probably would come in the form of sanctions relief. Now, the Iranian leadership right out the gate said, what are you talking about? This is dead on arrival. I mean, they are standing with the claim that nobody is even talking to the United States at baseline. But we've got a mixture of denials coming out over the past 12 hours. Iranian Press TV said the Islamic Republic of Iran insists on the fulfillment of its strategic objectives in confronting the hostile threat. Only if those objectives are achieved would an end to the war, not merely a ceasefire, be possible. So in that stance, kind of drawing the hard line and talking the talk, right? They're saying, no, we are not on board with any sort of ceasefire. This is actually very similar to what Putin says in negotiations there. He says, ceasefire, that's not what we're talking about. We don't want short-term solution. We want a long-term resolution, right? A complete resolution. They're saying they need to complete their strategic objectives first, as in they've still got a lot of work to do. It's talking the talk, no doubt. The Iranian foreign minister said, quote, we made it clear yesterday. There are no talks, no negotiations between Iran and the United States. We've had a very catastrophic experience, I should say, of the U.S. diplomacy. And look, to his credit, twice now in the last 9 months, there have been ongoing talks between the United States and Iran when we have initiated military action against Iran. If you just put yourself in their shoes, with that aspect alone, you have to wonder what it would take, what form of pain the Iranian regime would need to feel to say, this time that wouldn't happen. This time we actually will be able to come to some sort of agree settlement. The foreign minister spokesperson said there's been no contact between Iran and the United States in the past 24 hours, and Iranian armed forces continue to defend the country's territorial integrity. Our position is clear. We continue to defend ourselves. And just a few moments before recording, Reuters actually reported that there is no date and no location for possible U.S.-Iran talks. No venue, excuse me. It sounds like they're supposed to happen in Pakistan, but according to Pakistani officials, they don't have a date yet. They don't have a location inside of Pakistan. So concept of a plan for those talks. And one of the arguments as to why we keep hearing for the last couple days that talks are going well, as President Trump likes to say, and Iran wants to make a deal and we're moving towards some sort of negotiated settlement, is it might just be killing time for more U.S. assets to arrive in the region. In fact, just yesterday, the New York Times reported that the Pentagon has ordered around 2,000 soldiers from the 82nd Airborne Division to begin moving to the Middle East in order to give President Trump additional military options, even as he weighs a new diplomatic initiative with Iran. So we have troops on the way. We know we have one amphibious ready group with the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit set to arrive in theater sometime in the next 2 to 4 days. A lot of talk, a lot of talking heads on the news channels talking about how taking Harg Island is what we need to do. That would be the first step in opening the Strait of Hormuz. And that seems more and more like what's in the cards. Military force to open the strait, occupy territory either in Iran or on the islands just off the coast of Iran, and have a significant military presence there to allow and facilitate commercial vessels to move through the strait. Now, throughout all of this, U.S. and Israeli strikes are continuing, and we just got a notification a little bit ago that the U.S. and Israel have now passed 12,000 strikes carried out inside of Iran since the war began. U.S. Central Command put out their statistics saying more than 9,000 targets have been hit. Israel, for their part, says more than 3,000. We don't have a lot of detail on these reports at this point. So a lot of kind of very big picture, very broad statements. I'll show you here what we have from CENTCOM. Of course, we've got the occasional strike footage of something getting blown up. But then there, in terms of kind of the roll-up, the battle damage assessment, it's pretty vague, right? So we've got number of targets struck. I think it's 140 some vessels that have been sunk. But outside of that, they just have a list of the types of targets they've gone after and the types of U.S. assets that have so far been used in this campaign. So not a ton of detail when it comes to the publicly available battle damage assessments there. And this actually leads into an interesting assessment from former General Stanley McChrystal, who did an interview in the New York Times just yesterday. And I want to stress, we're starting to hear some pushback from senior U.S. officials from recent conflicts. We've got General McChrystal, now General Mattis, who quoted in yesterday's video talking about how there's not any good options for the United States at this point. I want to say General Petraeus as well spoke out about how challenging it's going to be to open the Strait of Hormuz. So we do have a number of former military officials starting to kind of beat the drum of, hey, this is going to be really hard. We need to understand what we're getting into here. In his New York Times interview, he talked about the seduction of air power to want to win all wars. And you can see how this plays out. I feel like that's probably the thought process for some senior leadership at the beginning of this campaign. Right? I mean, if we fast forward, all of a sudden here we are talking about the viability or where Marines are going to go versus the 82nd and where Special Operations Forces are going to land inside of Iran to seize the enriched uranium. At the beginning of this conflict, there was no discussion about boots on the ground. Over and over, it was stressed like, no. I mean, we're not going to take anything off the table, but this is an air campaign, right? And that's largely because the American people have been, for the most part, opposed to putting U.S. forces on the ground in the Middle East. General McChrystal said, quote, "We entered Iraq in 2003 with shock and awe, and then we spent a decade there fighting after it. I think in this case, we again fell for the seduction that if we bomb key targets, we will produce the outcome that we want, but the outcome's in the minds of the people. And unless you're going to kill all of the people, you may not affect that outcome. We may be at the point where we've run into a country that has an extraordinary capacity to be bombed." Again, this brings us back to what I think is a viable conversation to be having all day, every day, anytime the United States is engaged in military conflict, is are we doing what's necessary to match the strategic success to the tactical victories to strategic success? Our military is incredible. They're able to put bombs anywhere they want on bad guys around the world 24/7. We know that. That's not a surprise. The error we have had, in my lifetime at least, throughout the global war on terror, is matching those battlefield wins, one after the other, complete dominance over enemy forces with the strategic victory. So those battles are actually won for a good reason, other than just killing some bad guys and hoping that the next day turns out better. So a little bit of pushback here from General McChrystal, getting concerned that we might be again falling for that trap that air power can solve everything. But of course, we'll have that article and all the sources listed in today's video linked in the description below, along with a link over to Substack. We're actually moving up over there. We're like number 6 in the category right now for growing channels on Substack. What we're doing there is that kind of a consolidation of content, right? So it's got all of the short form, all of the long form, all of the interviews, all of the pictures, all of the podcasts, all of the links, all of the research that I do day to day is going into that platform. So it's kind of one place where it's all going to be consolidated, and all of that is free. The only thing that we have a paywall for is the ability to start new chats in the community chat. So if interested, I think it's a really good platform. I think it's pretty impressive how far it's come in the last couple of years. So if you're on that platform, check it out. If you haven't been over to Substack in a while, give it a look. I think it's pretty worthwhile at this point. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.